There's nothing the Labour Party loves better than a feud. The more inward-looking and the more vicious, the better. Back in the 1940s, someone remarked about the Labour Party's deputy leader, Herbert Morrison, that man is his own worst enemy. His colleague, the Foreign Secretary Ernie Bevin, growled, "Not while I'm alive, he ain't." They're at it again. Keir versus Wes versus Andy versus Ange. It's game on. Andy Burnham launched his election bid yesterday for leader. Sorry, I misspoke. I mean to be a humble MP for the constituency of Makerfield. Angela Rayner and Wes Streeting both want him back in Parliament. In fact, they're ready to make space for him, on the back benches, of course. He's not having any of it. He says he's not moving anytime soon. We'll see about that. For a government intent on tearing itself apart, I'll speak to the Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy. And we'll speak to the Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch. We'll dig into what the polls tell us about this government and a possible change of leadership with Ipsos Chief Exec, Kelly Beaver. Plus, with us throughout the show, former editor of the Financial Times, Lionel Barber, political editor of the New Statesman, Alva Ray, and editor-at-large of The Sun, Harry Cole. Welcome to Sunday Morning with Trevor Phillips. The Labour Party wants a new boss, and at least two of its leading lights, Wes Streeting and Andy Burnham, reckon it should be them. Maybe Angela Rayner does too, which is a relief, because for a while there, it seemed like nobody wanted the job.
Absolutely not, and I don't want to be leader of the Labour Party. I'm very happy and honoured to do the job.
What kind of politician are you? You don't want to be leader of your party?
No, I'm very happy and honoured and to be Deputy Prime Minister of this country.
You know this is being recorded, don't you? Because actually, that means one day, if you do, somebody's going to play it back to you.
Absolutely. I'll be happy for you to play it back to me. I have no desire to go for the leadership of the Labour Party. My desire is to deliver for the people of this country who have given me opportunities beyond what I could have dreamed of. Say the word never. Never. Are you ready to take on the mantle if and when the call comes?
I'm ready to do the job that I've been asked to do as the country's health secretary. There is no other job I would rather be doing.
The question I want to ask you, that I asked Angela Rayner, is you say there's only one job you're interested in, and it's one you've got now. And I said to her, does that mean that you would never be interested in the top job? Same question to you.
Yeah, well, I know I know
job?
exactly what you're up to, and it's mischief-making, and it's a load of rubbish, and I'm not entertaining it.
Do you want to be leader of the Labour Party?
To answer your question, I will take that fight as high as I can take that fight, because I think the country does need to change.
Mischief-making? Moi? Come on. Well, of course, the Prime Minister's dwindling band of supporters are pointing out that there's no vacancy at number 10. But since Labour's May the 7th drubbing, all these shrinking violets have been quietly letting it be known that if their arms were twisted, they might just be persuaded to serve a nation desperate for fresh leadership. Well, we're already getting some vaguely EU-friendly vibes from Streeting and Burnham. But so far, we know little about what any of these people would do that is different about crunchy here and now issues, like immigration, like housing, like crime, like social care or welfare reform. What we do know is that they all think that they're best placed to defeat Nigel Farage whenever a general election comes. But I think they'll need to come up with a better strategy than Labour's efforts so far to paint Farage as a racist, Islamophobic, lazy, greedy one-man band. That just has not worked. Last week, Reform captured almost 1,500 new council seats and 14 councils. The questions that all the candidates might do well to ask themselves before more finger-pointing is this. If so many of our fellow citizens voted for an outfit we regard as disreputable and loathsome rather than our party, what in heaven's name must they be saying about us behind our backs? Let's speak now to Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy. Good morning, Lisa Nandy.
Good morning, Trevor. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure to see you as always. Can we just quickly talk about yesterday's events in London? The Prime Minister told us that several foreign activists were prevented from entering the country and speaking at the Unite the Kingdom march, which went off pretty peacefully. Does your government no longer believe in freedom of speech?
No, of course we do. And actually, I was just listening to your introduction there, and I think that the framing that you had was the right one. You've got a group of people who are peacefully protesting and demonstrating and making their views heard, not just in London yesterday, but you've also got people who made their views felt very loud and clear at the ballot box last Thursday at the local elections, and those people have the right to be heard. They have the right to feel aggrieved about the situation facing them and their children in this country, and this government supports that. What people don't have the right to do is to come here preying on that anxiety and that insecurity, agitating, attacking the police and bringing disorder to our streets, and there's a clear difference between the two. We'll always fight for the former and stand up for them and their rights, not just to protest but to have better lives. We won't condone the latter.
All right, let's talk about what many people in your party, pretty much everybody in your party, is talking about right now. First of all, do you expect Keir Starmer to have left number 10 Downing Street in time for the summer school holidays?
No, I don't. I've spoken to the Prime Minister several times over the last week, and he was very clear with the Cabinet on Tuesday that if people want to challenge him, there is a process for doing that. There is a way to trigger a leadership contest to be leader of the Labour Party and to succeed him as Prime Minister. Nobody has done that yet, despite the absolute feverish speculation. Every hour on the hour for the last week, I've read that Wes Streeting was about to launch a challenge, that Andy Burnham was about to contest every seat in Greater Manchester, including my own, that Angela Rayner was written off, that Angela Rayner was now challenging. And most of it has turned out to be just froth and nonsense. We've got to get on with the job. We promised people that we would bring change to their lives, and we've got to take that fight out to the country and show that we can do it.
Well, froth and nonsense. The Health Secretary has resigned. Mr. Burnham essentially is giving up, what was a pretty significant post to run for backbenchers, and they're pretty clear. I mean, Mr. Streeting said yesterday, "I am standing." Mr. Burnham, basically, if you understand English, said pretty much the same thing. So they want a leadership contest. If they are successful, do you think, having talked to the Prime Minister, is there any part of him that might say, you know what, time to call it a day if there is a contest?
Well, look, I can't speak for the Prime Minister, only he can do that. I know that he weighs up the very heavy responsibility on him to make sure that we deliver on the promise that we made to people to create bigger and far more fundamental change in people's lives with far greater urgency than they've seen from us so far. I think there's a recognition across the whole party, whether it's Andy, Wes, Keir or any other man involved in our political movement, who have been saying that very openly for some time. But I believe that we've got to pull together, we've got to move forwards, and the Prime Minister, of course, has to make his own decision about whether he wants to take that next fight forwards. And ultimately, whether he does that will be up to him, it'll be up to Labour MPs, and it'll be up to the people of this country. But I was talking to quite a few Tory MPs in Parliament this week when we were down there delivering the King's speech, setting out changes to send and provision in schools and other things that will really help people. They were saying to me, this is one of the ways in which this country was allowed to get into the state that it did, that we inherited in 2024, because when you have this kind of introspection, what ends up happening is that things just stop moving in government, and we cannot allow that to happen. I'm here today talking to you, wanting to talk to you about how we're launching a bid to bring the Olympics to the north. I'd love to talk to you about the work we're doing rebuilding youth work and youth workers all over the country. But instead, we're talking about this, and Westminster has been talking about little else for for a week. So I think it's time that we brought people back into the conversation. They sent us a message loud and clear last Thursday that they want far more urgent, far bolder change. I agree with the Prime Minister on that. I agree with Andy Burnham on that. I think it's time that we took that fight out and started showing people that we will not hesitate to take on any system that stands in the way of them living a better life.
I am rather keen to talk to you about the Olympic bid, and I want to come to that. But is your message this morning to your colleagues, pack it in, stop talking about leadership change, get behind the Prime Minister and get on with the job, including to your friend, Mr. Burnham?
Yeah, look, I was out knocking on doors with Andy yesterday in Makerfield, which is a constituency just 10 minutes down the road from my house, and which I know very well. And the conversations that we were having on the doorstep yesterday were about the fact that people struggle to get decent, affordable housing. It was about clean water. People really concerned about that. A real sentiment that the lives on offer for people's kids are going to be worse than the lives that they led. And a real sense of anger around that. We talked about...
I don't get it. Why are you out on the doors with Andy Burnham? Why aren't you just telling him, what are you doing, mate? Why aren't you staying in Manchester? You and your colleagues have been saying to me for the last 3-4 months at least, Andy Burnham doing a terrific job in Manchester. That's why we blocked him from standing for Gorton and Denton, because he's such a great mayor. We can't afford to have him. But suddenly, what's happened? How's that changed? Suddenly, it's OK for him to stand for this seat. And you're still telling me that actually we shouldn't be having all this competition for a new leader, and we shouldn't be talking about it. What's going on?
No, I've never said that, Trevor. I mean, I think Westminster's loss was Greater Manchester's gain when Andy decided to leave Westminster politics and to become Greater Manchester Mayor. He's my mayor and he's done a terrific job here. But I do have to say to you, when you say stay in Manchester, we can hear you up north. I mean, you know, our voices matter in national politics, and I've always thought that Andy brings a perspective from this part of the country that hasn't been heard loud and clear enough in Westminster for decades. So we've got a by-election on. What on earth am I doing knocking on doors with him? I'm knocking on doors with the entire Labour movement because there's a by-election down the road from my house, and I want to make sure that we get a Labour MP elected who's going to take the fight to the systems that are stopping people from living the lives that we ought to live.
I mean, look, I just don't want to make too big a point of it, but there's only a by-election because one of your MPs stood down explicitly to allow Andy Burnham to stand. I mean, what is your point of view here? Is it that you think this is all a terrible mistake, there shouldn't be a by-election, you should be getting on with the job, or is it that you think Andy Burnham should be giving up Manchester and coming back to Manchester? And he's been pretty explicit. The reason for that is so you can become leader. Just be clear with us. What do you want to happen?
Yeah, what I want to happen is I want Andy to be able to return to Parliament. I said last time that the NEC, the National Executive Committee and Labour decided to block him, that I believe that was a mistake. And if I'd been involved in that decision, I would have voted to allow him to come back. I want the voices of people from towns like mine, and he lives just down the road in Lee, to be heard loud and clear in Westminster. Okay. I agree with the Prime Minister that the change that we've delivered so far has been significant, but it needs to be bolder and bigger and more fundamental and more urgent. And the sort of fights that we've been prepared to have in recent years, like the fight for renters, the fight for workers, the fight for football fans, I've still got the scars on my back from that particular fight. People need to see more of that from us. I think Andy can come and bring that perspective and that fight and that energy to this team. I want us to pull together, and I want us to get on with delivering on the promise that we made 2 years ago. OK,
look, Mr. Streeting has started to set out his stall, and he chose the ground on which he wants to fight. He has said straight away that he thinks that this country should one day be back in the EU. Is that the right grounds on which to fight? And do you agree with that aim?
Well, I like and respect Wes a lot, and I listened carefully to what he had to say yesterday. I think, you know, I have a different perspective on this than we do as a government. The government that he was part of until recently has been trying to take a far more pragmatic approach to bringing us closer to Europe and repairing some of the damage that was done from a poor Brexit deal to people's living standards in parts of the country like mine, rather than reopening the Brexit wars and going back again round that track.
So you think he's wrong to make this pitch to rejoin the EU?
Well, I just think it's a bit odd, if I'm honest, because essentially if rejoining the EU is the answer to what we were just told loud and clear by the country, and, you know, parts of the country like mine, where 25 out of 25, we lost 25 out of 25 wards, 24 of them to reform. If rejoining the EU is the answer, then essentially what we're saying to people is life was fine in 2015, we just need to go back there. I know Wes is coming up to campaign in the by-election quite soon. He will hear loud and clear from people in places like Wigan, Ashton, Winstanley, across Makerfield, that is absolutely not the case. And the answer has to be bigger. It has to be the sort of things this government is focusing on around good jobs, housing, living standards, costs of energy, opportunities for young people.
And
that's why the Prime Minister is right to say we need to get on with it.
You give the same advice to Mr Burnham. Let's not get back onto that whole Brexit Remain train. Let's focus on other things.
Well, I mean, Andy's got to speak for himself, as has Wes. And, you know, frankly, I'm not here to be a spokesperson for whichever man offers an opinion on politics in the Labour Party. But what I would say is that I've heard a lot from Andy and seen a lot in terms of what he's doing as Mayor of Greater Manchester that is squarely focused on people's living standards, on public transport, on good jobs and growth that people can really feel the benefit of. And I think that's exactly where we need to be as a party.
I want to ask you about reform in a second, but just before we go to that, I've noticed that I think now 4 times in this interview you have referred to men competing. Are you making a point here?
I mean, it's just not lost on me, Trevor, that I'm being interviewed by a man, being asked to give my views about several men in the Labour Party who I'm clearly not a spokesperson for. I'm sorry if I'm coming across as a bit irritated. I think what is really winding me up, if I'm honest, is that people told us loud and clear last Thursday that things weren't good enough, that they needed far more fundamental, far more urgent change in their lives. And somehow we seem to have just cut them out completely out of the conversation over the last week. And Westminster has gone into introspection mode, where the debate is being led about personalities and about individuals, when actually what I think the public really need to hear from us right now is that we've got a plan to turn things around. And whether it's the work that we're doing stabilising the economy, we've just had really good growth figures for the first quarter, whether it's the work that we're doing to put young people up front and centre, I think we need to bring it back to them and start talking about, you know, what is it that's worked that we've done over the last couple of years, but where is it that we really do need to go further and think bigger?
But forgive me, I don't want to digress too far from issues of policy, and as I say, I want to ask you about reform, but this is very interesting. I mean, honestly, there's not much I can do about being a bloke, but the Labour Party can make different choices. What is it about your party that means that, you know, if what happens is what we think is going to happen is going to happen, you're going to have the choice between 3 white blokes to face a black woman across the dispatch boxes, the Tories' 4th, I think, woman leader, their 2nd leader of colour. What is it about the Labour Party? And by the way, it does make a bit of raise a question about the Labour Party pointing the finger at other people about being institutionally sexist and racist, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I did try to fix that in 2019, if you cast your mind back that far. But look, I agree with you. I think a woman leader is long overdue. But we're talking as if we're in a leadership contest here. And actually, on the way here this morning, I've just... Well, can I just say that on the way here... I've just come over from Wigan to Salford this morning. Okay. I've had 2 people already say to me, like, can you just get on with the job? The Prime Minister is getting on with the job. If people want to trigger a leadership contest, they can. But I think that the idea that the rest of the country is obsessing about who is the leader of the Labour Party is just for the birds, to be honest. I think we need to get on with delivering on the promise we made.
Well, look, I wish we could talk about issues of substance, but your mates keep resigning, and, that puts it on our agenda. Just one thing I want to ask you about. Both the Prime Minister and pretty much everybody else says that Reform are now your major opponents. They're certainly your major opponents in Makerfield. Back in January, when you and I spoke, I asked you if you would describe that party as fascist. And you replied, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it usually is a duck. Is that still your opinion?
Yeah, it is. But I think, go back to where you started at the top of this programme. You and I have discussed this many times over the years. And I do not believe that everybody who votes for Reform or UKIP or the Brexit Party or whatever incarnation they take is wrong, racist, just as I was incensed by people being told that if they'd voted for Leave, they were somehow xenophobic, didn't want to play their part in the world, or at worst racist. I just don't accept that. And you cannot tell me that a town like mine that has driven far-right, openly racist parties out of town over and over again for 100 years has suddenly decided to completely change their approach. I think there are real grievances in people's lives, and I think that's what this is about.
I know you say that, but half of the voters in the Makerfield constituency 10 days ago or thereabouts voted for Reform. And I know you can say you don't think that they're racist, but you have either to say that you think that they support fascists or that they're idiots who don't know these people are fascists.
No.
Which is it?
No, I don't say that at all. I mean, it's a similar debate to the Brexit debate, isn't it? Is that I think leaving was a profound mistake, but the campaign that the Leave campaigners ran spoke to some very profound difficulties in people's lives that, frankly, the centre ground of British politics had just refused to address for far too long. And I think something similar is happening now, where people are saying that the centre ground of British politics has to step up and sort these things out, or they'll vote for somebody else, somebody who is telling them that there is a problem. Now, I don't accept in my town and in my community that the problem is immigrants. I go into my local hospital. And the problems that I see there are to do with decades of underfunding under a Tory government. I go down the high street, and the problems that we've got there is because of 4 decades of deindustrialisation that has stripped spending power out of the community. I think it's tempting at a time when people aren't offering the big solutions to people's lives to turn to somebody else, and that's why the Prime Minister is right to say we've got to be bigger, bolder, more urgent and more fundamental in the change that we create in people's lives.
Lisa Nandy, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Right, well, let's see what our panel made of all that. We're joined all morning by the former editor of the Financial Times, Lionel Barber, the political editor of the New Statesman, Alva Ray, and the editor-at-large of The Sun, Harry Cole. Well, Lionel, very good description, I suppose, from Lisa Nandy of what she thinks is going on. I'm not sure I'm that much wiser about what she thinks they ought to do about it and whether she wants the Prime Minister to stay. I mean, what did you hear?
Well, I was watching the theatre of the absurd. Because clearly there is a leadership contest underway. Wes Streeting wants to be Labour leader, and they're fighting that by-election in Makerfield because Andy Burnham wants to be Prime Minister. And the most absurd observation I have is that Keir Starmer does not want Labour, i.e. Burnham, to win that seat, because then he would face a leadership contest. So there was no prescription whatsoever for the current discontents or problems that this country has. There was no sense of the instability that we've seen for the last 10 years. 6 prime ministers, we'd be on to a 7th. By the way, we've had 6 chancellors as well and 5 defence secretaries. At the moment...
I think something like 16 housing ministers.
Well, indeed, and I was going to go into culture secretaries as well. So it does feel a bit as if they're looking at the UK like a football club. And I speak as a Spurs supporter on our 3rd manager, and we're not doing very well.
You're talking to a Chelsea supporter, so tough.
Well,
we beat you all ends up on that. Alva, make sense of it for us.
So I think there was a lot of noise in that interview, which you alluded to, around how Lisa Nandy thinks that this is all fluff and nonsense around a leadership contest. But there was also some signal. You know, she said that the Prime Minister has to make his own decision about his future. She didn't say he's determined to fight in any leadership contest. She's a member of his cabinet. She's seen as allied to Andy Burnham. It's worth pointing out, even though she is her own woman, as she made really clear during that interview. But she's a loyal member of Keir Starmer's cabinet, and she has changed the line this morning. She's no longer saying what people like Steve Reid were saying a few days ago, that he's determined to fight, you know, there's no vacancy. She just said, you know, I can't speak for the PM. I know he weighs up the responsibility. He has to make his own decision. I think that's quite a clear nod to the way Keir Starmer is in, as Lionel said, quite an absurd situation where there's basically a protracted coup going on now, where Andy Burnham for the next 6 weeks is going to try to, you know, fight to replace him as Prime Minister. And she's saying, actually, I'm not guaranteeing anymore that Keir Starmer will stick around to fight this.
I was completely right. That was a masterclass in disingenuous drivel, except for that one key point where she basically has accepted what the entire world can see now, that the premiership of Keir Starmer is no more. It is an ex-premiership. It is a zombie government. He is not the Prime Minister. He is not in control of his destiny. He is not in control of his party. He is squatting in number 10 until his party can sort out what they're going to do with him. It says, you know, we read in the papers today that he's going to go on his own terms. That is nonsense. He has been forced out of office, and it's going to happen, well, one way or the other, after this by-election. If Andy Burnham wins, you could well see a coronation. I think that would be a mistake. I think the party needs a little bit of bloodletting to get this direction of the country going, and some legitimacy for whoever is going to be the next Prime Minister. If Andy Burnham loses the by-election, well, all hell breaks loose, I think. Either way, one thing we are clear, and the one thing we got from that interview is Keir Starmer's premiership is dead. Which is extraordinary if you step back and think that less than 2 years ago, he won a 170-seat parliamentary majority. And that within 2 years, suddenly he's out. What does that tell you about the discipline, the focus in the Labour Party? What does it tell you about Keir Starmer as a leader? Frankly, he fails on all 3 counts for me. He's a very poor communicator. He can't pick a team, and he has no clear strategy for government for delivering the economic growth that is desperately needed. But it's a terrible state of affairs, which tells me that it's not so much that Britain is broken, it's British politics is broken.
Oh, well, I was going to ask you about that. There are 2 schools of thought, I think, which are emerging. One is, this is all about Keir Starmer's shortcomings. But there's also another school of thought, which is Britain is now ungovernable for some reason. Where are you on this, Alva?
I think that Britain is governable. I don't think that we've had terribly honest elections lately. And, you know, going on doorsteps ahead of elections for quite a long time, we've probably all experienced this. You hear voters saying that they want change, they want a direction, and time and again, they're actually coalescing very strongly around one person. You know, like Boris Johnson was given a huge majority, a huge mandate, and Keir Starmer, I know we call it a loveless landslide, but he was still given a landslide to govern. But at the last election, people weren't given really a sincere choice. I think that there's a kind of paralysis in politics where politicians feel like they can't tell voters the truth. And then, you know, we it was called a conspiracy of silence, wasn't it, on tax, that we knew taxes would have to go up after the election and neither party said it because they just wanted to win. I think that with more honesty from politics and maybe a different recalibration of the relationship between politicians and voters, surely this country is governable. I just think we haven't properly tried it in recent years.
Harry, you're watching us from afar.
Yeah, and from afar it looks pretty broken. Whether it's broken beyond repair is a very different proposition. But we're now entering an era of five-party politics, and that I think is only going to make things worse in a system that is purely 100% designed for two-party politics. You can make the argument that actually there's something a little bit more democratic in a way about having the sort of the horse trading go on behind the scenes before an election to get to a manifesto that a big enough tent of the Tories or Labour could do it. Or you can make the argument that actually, you know, each party sets out their stall and then you have European-style horse trading, which can take months and years after the election to find a government that everyone can agree with. There's an argument from both sides, but we are entering an era now where we need to realise that our politics is not ever going back into... The genie is not going back in the bottle. It has changed fundamentally. Whether any government is going to be able to do it, one of my biggest fears, and I've spoken to you before about this, Trevor, is, you know, how many more times is the public going to be asked? 2016, 2019, 2024. One thing that binds all of those elections together was change something, and they haven't been given change they've asked for. And if Nigel Farage comes in and sweeps in and hits the same old roadblocks, the same issues, the same broken politics, then I really do worry that we'll end up going down a slightly darker path.
I want to come back to Makersfield and all that in a second, but you probably know the Labour Party better than all of us. I noticed yesterday that Andy Burnham, in his campaign launch interview, said that he had been able to collaborate across parties in Manchester. He thinks that he should bring that to national politics, and that means proportional representation, a system of elections. Is there any appetite in the Labour Party for that?
So historically, there hasn't been at all. It's been a really sort of fringe issue within the Labour Party, right up to the leadership. That I think that Labour politicians have mostly taken the view that they have to win through the system that they've got, and otherwise just looks like complaining. But there's been a little bit of a shift. My colleague Megan Kenyon wrote a piece on this for the New Statesman recently. Among Labour MPs, there's been a little bit of a movement towards it. And I think that the challenge for Andy Burnham is that he has said in the past that he's in favour of proportional representation. So to go back on that now, in the interview yesterday, would have been a very early U-turn for his not a leadership pitch.
Lionel, the next step in in this saga is what happens in Makersfield. Andy Burnham, if he wins, gets back into the House of Commons. Clearly, it's going for the leadership. It's being said that if he beats Reform, it shows that he's the guy to beat Reform. I wonder a little bit about this. He wins in a constituency in his own backyard he grew up in, where he's very popular. He won't fight 650 constituencies himself. What do you think the meaning of this is going to be?
The meaning is that Mr. Burnham's supporters want a coronation. They don't want to have a contest with Wes Streeting or anyone else who may enter the fray. And I think that's dangerous. I think they should have a short, sharp election contest for the next leader. Otherwise, it will look like a fix. But the second point, Trevor, is that I don't think that local win up north, if Burnham does succeed, translates across the country because, as Harry was saying quite rightly, we're in a new era of fragmentation in British politics. We do have fire. The Greens are the new Corbynistas in a way, madcap economic programme, but they're there. That's the old Labour left. And meanwhile, you've got nationalist parties. By the way, SNP with price controls on eggs, please. Plaid Cymru in charge in Wales, where Labour has reigned supreme. So this is a new electoral map, and what Mr. Burnham does, if he wins, does not translate.
OK, I want to come back to the five-party thing later in the programme, but to mangle a famous old saying, never interrupt your opponent when it's tearing itself apart, with multiple factions vying for leadership. That's generally applied to all opposition parties this week, who have been watching as Labour descends into open civil war. Well, Kemi Badenoch did, though, manage to successfully get some limelight while delivering some withering put-downs to the government front bench during the chaos. I spoke to the Conservative leader a little earlier today. Kemi Badenoch, the government refused entry to several foreign activists yesterday who headed for the Unite the Kingdom march in London. Were they right to do so?
So the government and the security services have the right to make a call on who comes into the country. I'm less interested in what foreigners want to come and do here. I'm more interested in what the people of this country are concerned about. We have a right to protest, but there is no right for everybody to come to our country to protest. They should explain what the reasons were. I'm really concerned about the fact that we needed 4,000 police in London. I'm an Essex MP. This impacts people outside London, where they're taking our police officers. People have to cancel their leave to police these endless protests that are going on in London. Dozens of people constantly being arrested. It's having an impact on the whole country.
Would you have banned either of these marches, the Palestine Action one or the Tommy Robinson march?
So I have said that we should now start banning the pro-Palestinian marches because they are creating a climate of intimidation and fear against Jewish people. All this globalised, the Intifada and from the river to the sea nonsense is a cover for wiping out Jewish people. We've seen
people on those marches who don't think that that's what they're doing.
That may be the case, but there are others who know what that's about, and it's encouraging them. We've seen murders at a synagogue in Heaton Park. We have seen what happened in Golders Green just a few weeks ago, 2 attempted murders. I think it's time, we should call time on that.
The Tommy Robinson march, anything on that concerned you?
So I obviously didn't go there. I think that it's one of those marches where there are lots of people who are going for good reasons. There's some people who are going for not very good reasons. But it's a different kind of thing. They are talking about uniting the kingdom. The other march is about something happening much further away, about pro-Palestine. It's been going on weekly for much longer.
Are you sure you're not applying some double standards here?
No. What I'm not doing is spending time focusing on the things that don't matter to the people of this country. There are people in this country who are worried about energy. They don't know where their next meal is coming from. They don't know if they're going to be able to keep their house. We've got a government that is spending all its time focused on itself rather than the issues that are in the country. And these marches, in my view, are not the number one thing that's on the minds of your viewers.
One quick thing about
the cost of living in their lives.
One quick thing about these marches, though. Tommy Robinson said yesterday that to the crowd, I'm quoting him here, you have to join a political party. A very democratic thing to say. He says, I don't care if it's Reform, if it's Advance, or if it's Restore, or if it's the Conservative Party. You're glad to get Tommy Robinson encouraging people to join your party?
So I'm not a supporter of Tommy Robinson. I don't endorse his views.
The fact that he thinks the Conservative Party might be a home for his supporters.
But he is free to speak his mind. He's free to speak his mind. He's not somebody who I'm a supporter of or who I endorse. He's someone who's had to go to prison for contempt of court. There's a lot of that he says that I disagree with. He is free to say that. What I want people to know is that the Conservative Party is a new party under a new leader. We have changed. If you join us, you've got to be a believer in our principles. We are the party of common sense. We don't want psychodrama. We don't want drama queens or people who are all about agitating. We want people who are thinking about how do we get more energy? How do we drill our oil and gas in the North Sea? How do we cut the welfare bill? We're spending more now on welfare than we get in income tax. That's what the Conservative Party is about.
You might not want Tommy Robinson himself. I'm sure you regard him as a bit of a drama queen. But does it worry a little bit that he thinks that the people who support him might actually be the sort of person that would be welcomed into the Conservative Party?
The Conservative Party is a party that's been in this country for 200 years. It has been the longest surviving political party in the history of democracy. We get majority support. We're coming back after a historic defeat, and we welcome support from people across this country, but it has to abide by our values. It's irrelevant what Tommy Robinson is saying. What's relevant is what I, the leader of the Conservative Party, is saying.
As leader of the Conservative Party, you might have to face a new Labour leader, possibly Andy Burnham. I suppose you'd prefer to keep Keir Starmer in place now that your team seems to think that you've got the measure of him.
The problem is not just Keir Starmer or Andy Burnham or West Streeting. They're all as bad as each other. I can deal with any of them. It doesn't matter whether it's Angela Rayner or Ed Miliband. They will be, just as simple for me to deal with because they all have the same problem. They don't know why they're there. They've got no plan for the country. They think winning an election is the same as governing a country. And that is why I know that the next 3 years we will have a Labour government. They won't call an election because turkeys don't vote for Christmas, but they'll be making everything worse. And that's why I have an alternative agenda. You saw this week, I had a King's Speech response where I said, here's what you should be doing instead of messing around fighting amongst yourselves.
Let's deal with what seems to be coming down the track. Both West Streeting and, to some extent, Andy Burnham said yesterday that the Labour Party under their leadership would move closer to the EU. In fact, West Streeting said at some point he wants to be back in the EU. How do you respond?
This is exactly what I'm talking about. The country wants us to make the best of Brexit, make the best of leaving the EU. The idea of starting again, going backwards, having all of these negotiations, this is a sign of a Labour Party that does not have a plan for the country. So they want to go back and refight wars which were settled a long time ago. And I'm saying that we're the only ones who have a plan. Making the best of leaving the EU.
You guys had 8 years to make the best of Brexit,
that's not true.
You made pretty hash of it to the extent that more than the majority of the population now think that Brexit was a bad decision.
I completely disagree. We left the European Union in January 2020. That's not even 8 years ago, let alone when we lost the election.
Yeah, but since 2016.
No, I wasn't even an MP then. I wasn't an MP when we voted to leave the European Union. I came in after that. The point I'm making is that things like scrapping green taxes off our energy bills, scrapping VAT off our energy bills. You can't do that if you're in the EU. We have an advantage over other countries when it comes to jet fuel and the rules around refuelling while we're having this fuel price shock because we're not in the EU. We should be using the advantages of it, not going back to the past, rehashing this argument. It's not going to be as simple as walking through a door. It's going to be years more of negotiations, years more of the country not being governed. These people do not have a plan for the country. They're just throwing this out there. The Conservatives have a plan.
You're rather casual about the likelihood of a change in leadership. Isn't real danger that right now, you're very confident this morning, you're very confident this week in the House, but you're facing the least popular politician in the country, possibly since records began, or one of the least popular, and you would now be up against the most popular if Andy Burnham became leader. You are facing a real threat.
He's only popular because he hasn't had to do anything. Politics is about making difficult decisions. As soon as he comes in and realises there's no money to throw about, he's going to become unpopular. Andy Burnham is talking about, increasing borrowing. That's going to hit everybody's mortgages. That's going to hit borrowing costs for this country. It's going to put billions on debt interest. We will be paying a Burnham premium. I do not think that that's going to make him popular at all.
You are riding the wave, I suppose, of the government's discomfiture, and you've, to give you credit, you've embarrassed them over the Chagos Islands, over Mandelson, over their own divisions and so on. But if you look at the results on May the 7th, you didn't benefit. It was Nigel Farage who benefited. You're eventually going to have to work with him, aren't you? So
I said that I'm not doing any deals with Nigel Farage. I mean, look at what he's talking about right now. He wasn't doing his job last week. He didn't turn up for the King's Speech. He has this fishy £5 million donation, which he kept a secret, that's now being investigated. Richard Tice and Robert Jenrick, they all have, sleaze allegations against them.
You can say all of this about him,
I'm not doing
but
deals.
the voters aren't listening to that.
Yes.
The voters chose him on May the 7th.
No.
14 councils, 1,500 new councillors.
Some voters did.
You lost, I think, what, 600?
But Trevor, do you know what? The places that voted Reform last year, like Hertfordshire, we're winning back those seats from Reform because when people get Reform, they don't like it. Worcestershire County Council is now in a complete mess. They're cycling through leaders, kicking each other out. People are suffering. Those who are living under Reform are suffering. So let me be very clear, no deals. If people want Conservative policies, they need to vote Conservative.
I know
We're not stitching anything up to help Nigel Farage or to help Reform.
I know it's early on Sunday morning. I may be missing the point here, but I think Reform won more than 1,400 new seats last week. I think that you lost getting on for 700.
Nope, that's not true.
How many did you lose?
No, that's not true. And also, don't forget...
How many did you lose?
No, Trevor, we lost... I'm not here to say we didn't lose seats, but these are seats that we won at the height of conservatism, you know, when Boris Johnson was there. We have gone forward since last year.
The voters...
No, I'm not playing this game, Trevor. I'm not playing this game. We won seats off Labour.
The democracy game, like the voters...
No, I know what you're trying to
right?
do. I'm not here to talk about reform. If people want reform, they'll vote reform. If people want conservatism, they'll vote conservative. I'm not doing a deal. That's the point. And I'm tired of people constantly making politics a game. Who are you going to do a deal with? Who are you stitching this up with? I'm here to talk about bringing down the welfare bill, cutting our energy bills, making sure that we are economically successful, getting Britain working. I don't want to hear about Nigel Farage, who doesn't have any policies and is just messing around. He might be doing well on a protest vote.
Any of those things.
No, it's 3 years till a general election.
You get elected.
It's 3 years until a general election. Is there a general election tomorrow, Trevor? I don't think so. People voted in councils that are being abolished next year. It's a free hit. I am telling you now that Nigel Farage is making the same mistake Labour did, thinking that winning elections is the same as running the country. It's not the same. He will run into problems like Keir Starmer has, like Andy Burnham will. There's only one party that's talking any sense. That's my party, the Conservative Party.
You can't get to do any of that unless you get elected.
So
let's do things one at a time.
Which we will. We will get elected.
Let's do things one at a time.
Otherwise, the country is going to be in chaos for years.
But you seem reluctant to accept what the voters said. The voters voted for reform. They didn't vote for your party.
Trevor.
Do you want a general election now?
The voters voted for Labour in 2024, and they had a historic landslide. Look at where they are now. So stop pretending that local elections are the same as a general election. It's not the same. You know what you're doing. I'm not playing the game. You know what you're doing. It's very silly. Labour won a historic landslide. Look at where they are now. So we know that there's all to play for in 2029, and the Conservative Party is ready. We're going to be even more ready. We've only just started with our plans. And we've got the best offer. If
Sir Keir Starmer has to stand down and Mr Burnham or Mrs Streeting or Mr Rayner becomes a leader of the Labour Party and Prime Minister, will you call for a general election? So I think that Rachel Reeves has actually said something which makes sense for once. She said if there's a leadership election, the country is going to be plunged into chaos. So I think that they should have an election. If they do what they say they're going to do, have a completely different mandate. The time when you don't have a general election is when you continue the mandate. They're talking about leaving going back into the EU, rejoining and so on. They have to have a general election. They do. So if there's a new leader, you think there must be a general election? I think if they're changing the mandate that Labour was elected on, yes. But as far as I'm concerned, Labour cannot govern. It doesn't matter whether there's a new leader or not. Their backbenchers are all left-wing. They just want to spend more and more money. They don't know how to fix anything. They don't know how to fix energy crisis. They don't know how to create jobs. Young people in our country aren't getting jobs. They're struggling. Unemployment has increased every single month since Labour came into office. That's what worries me. What worries me is that I'm going to have a huge mess in 3 years' time to clean up, because every day they're making it worse. Can I talk to you, if I may, about something that's less partisan than what we've been discussing, which is the tone of politics. A Reform candidate recently said, I'm quoting him here, "Can't believe the amount of Nigerians in town, should melt them all down and fill in the potholes." There are all sorts of things from all sides, pretty much, that we are hearing of that tone. Are you worried about the tone of political debate? So I think that was a disgusting comment that Reform candidate made. And the Reform leadership, I think Richard Tice wouldn't even condemn it. That's what I'm worried about. People say all sorts of stupid things. They should get slapped down when they do that. We cannot have a climate of violence against people based on their ethnicity in this country. But you need the leaders of the party, you need the senior ones, to be able to say, that's not what we're about, we're very much against it. When they don't say that, then we need to be worried. And I was really shocked when Richard Tice was interviewed that he would not condemn those comments. But I think there's a sort of a tone of hostility, and there's a fine line between something which, everybody enjoyed your side eye at West Streeting this week, but you also had a go at the front bench's haircuts. Surely politics should be above this kind of thing.
I don't think politics has ever been above teasing your political opponents. In fact, I think most of politics has been about that. That's very different from talking about melting people and harming them.
Okay.
And it was a serious point. They have been banned from pubs. They have been banned from hairdressers.
Okay. I don't want you to
That's
repeat...
quite a serious... that's
I'm not inviting you to repeat your speech. I just wonder whether we have to be careful about the kind of rhetoric. I mean, let me try another way of putting this. You've won some new fans this week, and maybe it's to do with the kind of rhetoric that you've used. Nicki Minaj compares you to Margaret Thatcher. Elisa Banks, I think, is supporting you.
Azalea Banks, yes.
Azalea Banks, I beg your pardon. What is it about you that leads these women who are famous for their beefs with Cardi B and Mariah Carey and Taylor Swift and always getting into battles and so on? What is it about you that attracts them?
I think they just like feistiness. I think they're online a lot, and they've seen these videos. I'm just amazed that people across the Atlantic are watching our PMQs. I think that's it's something that they don't have in the US. They don't have the holding of a president to account the way we do it. So it's something about British democracy that I think is quite special.
Are you a fan of hers? Are you going to feature on her next track?
I doubt I will be on her next track, but I still do like Starships, and I still do like 212, which is Azalea's song. So they can probably hear the R&B and hip-hop fan in me.
OK, we'll see. We'll see if anybody samples your next speech.
Perhaps.
Kemi Badenoch, thank you so much for your time this morning. Back to our panel, Lionel, Alva and Harry. Before I come to them, I just want to show you this, because I mentioned it during the interview. This is what she did during her speech to Wes Streeting.
I suppose the Health Secretary has been a bit distracted lately, hasn't he? Yeah, hasn't he? He's chuntering now. Why don't you just do your job? Do your job. Even worse, Mr. Speaker, is what isn't in the gracious speech. There's no point in him giving me dirty looks. We all know what he's been up to. We all know. Even worse, Mr. Speaker.
I'm afraid, I don't normally get into this, but that side eye is a thing that my aunt used to do to me when I was a kid, when she was telling me, don't ever do that again, or it's big trouble. Look, Harry, she, I guess, has found her voice, and you can see that in the interview. But she's not benefiting from it, is she?
Yeah, I don't think anyone can doubt and watch Kemi Badenoch's performance beginning, and not think she's beginning to hit her stride. She's becoming more confident with the dispatch box. She's obviously clearly becoming more confident in interviews, managing just to sort of keep you on your toes, but without actually kind of going quite full aggressive. As
she didn't punch me.
Exactly. And look, it's been a rocky start for Kemi Badenoch. It's been a rocky start, a couple of years with the Conservative Party. Yeah, the obvious retort to anything they have to say is 14 years. Well, why didn't you do that when you had the opportunity? On a lot of these issues the country is facing, on net zero to mass migration, it was on their watch. I think you're right, Trevor, in the fact that there's a danger that a couple of good performances here and there, and winning back Wandsworth Town Council and Westminster, these are pieces that have been Conservative for generations, is somehow going to sort of put a fig leaf over some of the major problems. And the fact that actually, look at Scotland, look at Wales, look at North of England, the Conservative Party is becoming a fringe party of the home counties, of the stockbroker belt, and of wealthy, actually affluent central London. Quite a big minority vote, growing minority vote in central London, aspirational vote that is just not representative of anywhere else in the country. So all the good Commons performances and all the side eyes doesn't cover up the fact the Tory party are actually going backwards.
And she's moving the goalposts, basically, because a few months ago she was asked to define success in these elections, and she said it was simple, it was gaining seats. She actually lost seats, and we heard her there say, well, but actually that was from a very high watermark, that was from when the Tories were popular. That's all true, but actually by her own metrics, she failed in these elections. And I think that in a terrible week for Keir Starmer, maybe one of his best moments this week was saying, we both had bad election results on May the 7th. The problem is, only the Labour Party has realised it.
by getting rid of Keir Starmer.
What did you make of that, Lionel?
Well, she's very good at managing low expectations. And if you think of the news after the council elections, even though the Tories lost more than 4... In a way, you can maybe work undercover, do some of the hard yards on policy, and try and establish, under this mantra, we're under new management, that you've got some serious policies. But as Harry and Alva have both said, this is a shrinking party. The big momentum is Reform UK under Nigel Farage. They're light on policy, high and heavy on vibe, but they're there, they're making advances, and they're playing to this sense that, the Tories failed, Labour's failed after 2 years. We're heading for somehow, Trevor, you and I remember this because we're oldies, late 70s, the 1979 moment, where finally long-deferred decisions are now going to be made with a newcomer on the scene. Kemi Badenoch would like to be that figure, but at the moment, it looks like Nigel Farage.
Indeed. By the way, just because we love a fact on this show, the number of seats that the Tories lost on May the 7th was 563. So, we know. Almost 600, I misspoke. It wasn't almost 700. But here is where we stand today. The Polar Coaster tells us that the Tories, they're sort of flatlining, chuntering along, but Reform, everybody said, oh, they were in decline and so on. Actually, they're not really. They stand a good chance, I guess, of winning in Makerfield. The issue now, I think, is they're going to be put to the test, aren't they, with the number of councils they've got to run. And it's entirely possible that Nigel Farage, who, as you all know, I've always said doesn't really want to be Prime Minister because it involves all sorts of work and stuff like that. He might actually become Prime Minister by accident.
Money helps as well.
Yes.
I interviewed him on Thursday, and he had sort of, he's never really spoken about it before, but he said he was actually, obviously, keeping him up at night. It's obviously daunting. It is obviously, a couple of years ago, he was thinking about, swanning off into the sunset and fishing, and now here he is back. I have to say, though, Andy Burnham, Wes Streeting, I think Kemi was kind of onto that as well. They're kind of gifting him these talking points, this idea that Britain wants to have another couple of years of talking about Brexit. Now, even Andy Burnham, Wes Streeting obviously was much more explicit in his saying we should rejoin, but Andy Burnham was asked about it yesterday, and he said, yeah, my long-term aim is just to rejoin the EU, but obviously I'm not going to talk about it in this by-election because the by-election is 65% the Leave seat, 51% of the voters, if you add up the wards, voted for Reform last week. If they turn this into a debate about the EU, it is going to hand Nigel Farage the keys to number 10. The EU that we would be even possible to rejoin is not the one we left. It is the euro. It is a loss of veto. It is a loss of rebate. And tell them again, just as a campaign slogan, how many more times does the establishment need to be told? They're making a very, very, very tactical game, playing a very dangerous tactical game on this EU stuff if they don't want Nigel Farage to be walking across the threshold.
Just quickly, Alva, what do you think Wes Streeting's up to? I mean, the logic of Harry's case, which is to say, this is not a thing you want to get into if you're Labour and you want to win votes. Why did Wes Streeting raise it yesterday?
Well, and that exactly as Harry put it, that has been a concern inside the Labour government for quite some time, that people don't want to hear the arguments of the past. But it's also the case that the public have moved on whether they think that Brexit was a good decision. The polling really clearly shows that. There's frustration within the Labour Party, this feeling that Nigel Farage is sort of responsible for pushing this, that it hasn't worked and just it hasn't stuck to him at all. And actually, Nigel Farage doesn't really want to be talking about Brexit. I think what Wes Streeting is up to is he thinks that Labour's position on this has been really incoherent. It has been saying that it needs to... that Brexit has been a disaster, but not that they should rejoin. I think that this is a long-term aim, and he's probably playing to Labour members as well.
All right, we'll come back to that in just a moment. We're going to take a closer look at the polling on this government and on a possible new leader.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be allowed to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... Hi, darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
...is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more.
Well, let's kick off.
And make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs?
He's coming out! What more do you need?
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting.
The whole neighborhood has rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking...
Thank you so much.
...trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
Now, let's take a closer look at what people think of the government and the potential changes to its leadership that we've been talking about all morning. Kelly Beaver is the chief executive of Ipsos, the respected polling organisation. She's with me now. Morning, Kelly.
Good morning.
With the current Prime Minister. Does him staying or going make any difference?
So from the public's perspective, they are more likely to say that Labour would have a better chance if he was not the Prime Minister. We know that the public are generally very dissatisfied with the government and with Keir Starmer. We've got as many as 3 and 4 say they're dissatisfied with him, and 2 and 3 say that they think that he should step back as leader. But interestingly, they are not clear about when he should do that, whether it should be now or whether it should be later.
Oh, right, OK. So the fact that he might sort of hang on isn't of interest to them. They just basically think that he should be gone, I guess, up before the next election.
At some point before the next election, and they are very divided on that. And the challenges that he faces, it's partly, obviously, the context in which he's operating within. But for him as a leader, when people look at the leadership traits that they want to see from a Prime Minister on some things, like being perceived as good in a crisis, or indeed, generally being seen as somebody who can be an experienced leader, he fares quite well. Where he struggles is being in touch with ordinary people. There has been a significant degree of loss of trust as well over the past 6 months. And of course, those things really do matter when you're looking to who's leading you through what is a relatively febrile environment for the British public today.
So that's the source of his unpopularity. But what do they think about the other candidates that might be available? Burnham, Rayner, Streeting, Cooper, all these people.
So when you pose the question about favourability on the list that you're showing on screen, it's a mix of people. It's a mix of, a mayor, you've got people who are MPs and part of the cabinet, and of course you've got the Labour Party themselves. For the general public, Andy Burnham would be somebody that resonates well with them, and you can see there he's got a satisfaction rating of plus 41 amongst the population at the minute. Now, that is high. The public don't get to vote should any leadership contest actually take place. Of course, that happens amongst the Labour membership. And when you pose a similar sort of question to them, bearing in mind it is very early, there is no leadership contest, etc., you can see that similarly Burnham would be up at the top for them. But the rank ordering below that is very different for members versus the general public. Amongst members, Keir Starmer performs better than when you ask the general public themselves, where he's very much bottom of the table.
Just before we go on, it's striking, actually, that Andy Burnham's the only one who's more popular than the party. All the others are, in a way, a drag on the party.
That's right. And when you look at what may happen in Makerfield, and I'm sure we'll come to that, you know, where the party itself is a laggard amongst the population there and how they feel about the party, he may be a leader who can help buck that trend in the north, of course.
All right, well, let's... the Labour Party regards reform now as the real opposition and Nigel Farage as their real enemy. And we can see here which leader will do better against Farage. What do you think?
Well, this is a head-to-head, and this isn't how things work in reality, but it's very interesting, and it would give the Labour Party a little bit of cause for hope. When you pose the direct question, who would the public prefer to see a government led by, for example, Andy Burnham, or a government led under reform by Nigel Farage, Burnham comes out higher. But it's the same for all of the candidates. It's Wes Streeting, or potential candidates, Wes Streeting and Angela Rayner, where actually the population tell us that they would prefer a government led by Labour under any of those. And if you pose the question for Keir Starmer himself, it's +11. So there is some degree of hope within that particular data set for the current government and the Prime Minister. But when people go to vote, they think about three key things. The leader is a big part of it, but it's not the only part. It's also how do they feel about the parties? How do they feel about the policies or the solutions that those individuals are putting forward to help solve the big issues that Britain face today?
It's always been the case, I think, that the best indicator of what's likely to happen is what people think is going to happen rather than what they want to happen. And here we've got a graph that tells us who they think will probably be the Prime Minister, irrespective of their own preferences.
So yes, indeed. When you ask the British population, bear in mind this question was asked in and around the time of the local government elections. And you do see that the British population, almost half now, believe that Nigel Farage is likely to be the next Prime Minister in this country. But a lot can change in a period of 2 years. We've seen that over the last 2 years, what has happened to the sort of relative support that the Labour Party had at the 24 election. And you can see in Keir Starmer's own ratings what's happened over that time. A lot can change, and a lot can change with different policies, different leadership, and real clarity on what a party stands for.
We haven't asked you for a graph on this, but one of the things that has struck me very forcibly, and this is about, you know, the real guts and dirt of politics. Almost everything has been thrown at Nigel Farage. All sorts of things have been said about him. There's the 5 million donation, there's a this, that and the other. It seems to make absolutely no difference. Is that right? Or am I...
So when we look at trust in politics and politicians, it's generally incredibly low. And people have their own preconceived views about what individuals' strengths are and what they stand for, etc. For Nigel Farage, people really do feel they understand what he stands for. 6 in 10 of them say they know what he is about and what he stands for, comparatively to the Prime Minister today, where it's as low as a third. So yes, some of those challenges that have come up into the press, I'm sure the population will look at those as he continues to be in the limelight. But trust is already quite low. People have their own perceptions on what they would expect from different leaders, and they may hold them to a high standard or different standards as well.
That's very interesting. They sort of know what they think about Nigel Farage, and not much surprises them.
Well, but the other thing is, what actually matters to the British public today? Are they really interested in scandals and little member votes? What really matters to the British public are the things that we hear from them on the doorstep. Cost of living and the economy are top of the pops for where the British public are at. And when you look at which parties are most speaking to the solutions in those areas, at the minute, the Reform Party would seem to be leading the way on what they say they would do around cost of living. So that's what's really cutting through with the British public. Big issues. Who's got the solutions to those issues? Because we haven't seen concern about the economy in this country at such a weak point in the last 50 years that Ipsos have been polling it.
Kelly Beaver, Ipsos, thank you so much for that. Really interesting. Thanks very much for your time this morning. In just a moment, we'll hear once again from our panel.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more.
Well, let's kick off.
And make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs?
He's coming out! What more do you need?
Well, back to our panel. Former editor of the Financial Times, Lionel Barber, the political editor of the New Statesman, Alva Ray, and editor-at-large of The Sun, Harry Cole. Now, this I found really interesting. There's a big debate in the Labour Party about whether they should tilt left or should tilt right. Is the bigger threat the Greens or is it Reform? And what this tells you, particularly in England, the Labour voters who have gone off to the Greens say that they are possibly ready to come back if they find the right leader and policies and all the rest of it. But those who have defected to Reform, 89% of them not coming back. Alva, is this persuasive?
I think it is. I mean, it's curious. I think a lot of people in the Labour Party wouldn't see this as a question of whether they need to go right or left, because there's just a funny thing going on in politics right now where people are just unhappy with the status quo. You know, the Greens and Reform are kind of fighting over the same voters, you know, looking for a protest vote. Immigration sometimes divides those people, but it's less straightforward than that. I mean, there was quite compelling evidence from John Curtis after the May 7th locals, where he said that even though Labour was losing seats to Reform, it was losing votes to the Greens, which is why it was falling to Reform. So I think that there's a bit of a sense from parts of the Labour Party that they should be trying to get those progressive voters back. But actually, I think all of the would-be leadership contenders say it's bigger than that, that you actually need to unite right and left around a big economic offer. The country's really quite divided over cultural issues, and really the way you navigate that is to dial down those cultural divisions, and you focus on the cost of living, people's, you know, a bold economic offer that can appeal to everyone, and then it becomes less about looking to the left voters or right voters and just something for everyone.
Yeah, I don't think it's so much left and right. I think cultural issues are really important, and that's what Nigel Farage is benefiting from. He's playing on those issues. It seems to me that it's really important that the debate centres on economic realism. I mean, we are spending more than we are earning, and we are borrowing more than we can afford. And if the Labour Party tilts or moves decisively right, with higher taxes, punitive taxes for the wealthy, jacking up capital gains tax to income tax levels. This is going to drive away foreign investors. It's going to mean people like Jamie Dimon, the JP Morgan boss, who's creating jobs with a big new building in headquarters in London. This is really important.
8,000 jobs, he reckons.
It's critical. We're doing a Mandami in New York, and that is very dangerous. Already, Trevor, and this has been said, but it bears repeating, that long-term borrowing costs, that's the 30-year bond, that's over 5%. The 10-year borrowing, also over 5%. This means that now Greece and Italy are borrowing at better rates than this country, Britain. Never mind France and Germany, which is doing better. We're in the second division. So if the Labour Party moves further left, all those people who are feeling squeezed by the cost of living, and by the way, inflation is coming with the problems still in the Gulf, with jet fuel increases, energy, all this is going to hurt. So a tilt left is very dangerous.
I know we don't want to get too locked into the trams of left and right, but I think that there is an issue here about the view of the party about what should happen compared to the view of the country as to what. And here's one way of looking at that. Here, if the Labour list, people who do polling of Labour members, did this poll comparing different possible leaders to Starmer. What I think is interesting here is that everybody beats Starmer, with the one exception of Streeting, who the party would see as the candidate of the, let's call it the right, but basically spending restraints, welfare reform, and so on. And I think, Harry, there's an issue here about what the Labour Party wants and whether the country wants the same thing.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. And you could actually argue, you could make the case looking at the candidates on that wall. Angie Rayner, what does she do when she's offered? She's basically broken the rental market by making landlords flee across the land. She's made it harder to employ people in this country with her sweeping legislation. So that wasn't, we wouldn't exactly call that a success, yet she's wildly popular there with the members. Whereas Streeting has got... He's got hospital, he's got waiting lists down. He's got a story to tell. One of the things that, many people who were wavering about the prospect of a Labour government was they could actually do something on the NHS. Look at that. Does he get any love from his party? Does he? Hell. Ed Miliband, the net zero zealot. He is adored by the Labour membership. The rest of the country thinks he's crackers.
Point made, and I guess I'd only add one point, which is that Shabana Mahmood, who's actually brought down the immigration numbers, doesn't even get on the list. Anyway, we'll be back in a couple of minutes.
First Minister, how are you?
Good morning. Good morning.
Nice to see you. How are you feeling?
Looking forward to getting into the parliamentary chamber.
Are you any further forward to making a decision?
No, it's an important day today.
All of the claims were in line with my parliamentary duties, so I'm making that clear to you, Conor.
He was a Scot through and through.
He was a very good politician.
Alex Salmond was controversial, he was a disruptor, but above all, he was respected.
Will you resign if you lose this week?
Again, I'm not planning to, of course, lose the vote of no confidence. I'm planning to win that vote of no confidence.
His face said it all.
My intention to stand down as party leader.
This is now a storm with deadly consequences. How are they feeling?
They're a bit scared at the minute.
We've been told to evacuate.
How are you feeling?
Devastated.
Hundreds of homes were wiped out by flooding. I'm Conor. Scott is 5 years sober after a cocaine addiction left him close to death.
Scotland has a shameful record. Worse than England, the worst in Europe. Why not just say you failed? Because then you might get more respect from families who've lost loved ones.
This is where one of the UK's most prolific rapists thought he'd got away with murder.
Sky News can reveal that former sex workers had told police he was sexually violent.
My Emma.
Free wherever you get your news. It's over, isn't it?
The Americans say he is Rossi, a fraudster.
This has been one of the most bizarre cases ever heard in a courtroom in this country.
A dangerous murderer.
Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive Andrew Ennis after this?
She said she can forgive him, but as long as he's behind bars.
By doing the right thing, it's destroyed your life.
They terrorised me. They intimidated me.
I'm so grateful.
Sky News. The full story first.
I saw police being forceful, pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests.
Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support.
What country are you
From the UK.
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion and your reporting. Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News. People are directly protesting.
The whole neighbourhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking,
Thank you so much.
trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
Back to our panel, Lionel, Harry, and Alva, you're going to say something about this graph, I think.
Yes, I mean, I guess firstly, the Starmer versus Streeting thing is never going to happen because all those other people are so determined that it won't. So there is no situation, even though I think Keir Starmer's close allies would love for that to be the scenario that he's facing, even if Andy Burnham can't make it back for whatever reason, there will be a Rayner or a Miliband determined to basically stop Wes Streeting. So unfortunately, that scenario is not going to happen. But yes, I think you were making a point about sort of the Labour membership versus the views of the country as a whole. We're already seeing how that is shaping this debate around who should be the next Prime Minister, because Wes Streeting gave his speech yesterday saying that eventually the UK should rejoin the EU. We know that the Labour membership, it's difficult to poll, so it all comes with a health warning. The people who respond to this are the most engaged Labour members, and there might be others who are a bit less engaged and take a different view. But we know, as far as we can tell, that Labour members are really, really pro-EU, and this is an important issue for them. It's not necessarily representative of the whole country, and that they tend to be sort of towards the middle of the Labour Party, so they're to the left of the country as a whole, as you would expect. And it's the same challenge that the Conservatives face, that, you know, when we had that election, Liz Truss versus Rishi Sunak, the Tory membership overwhelmingly wanted Liz Truss to slash taxes, and that didn't end well. So the fact of having a contest, the way Streeting and Burnham are pitching to the Labour membership at the moment will shape things in an interesting way.
All right, you've each got 15, 20 seconds to tell me, and you're going to earn your breakfast this now, who is going to be Prime Minister at Christmas this year, Harry?
Andy Burnham.
Why?
I suspect he will squeak through in Makerfield, unless, you know, his classic sort of fence-sitting style that we came to know and love in 2010 and 2016 shines through. But I suspect his personal vote will take him through, and the PM will see the writing on the wall. And
I agree, Andy Burnham, but just for the hypothetical, it's not impossible it could be Wes Streeting. I do agree with Harry, but we've seen twice before in a Labour leadership contest Andy Burnham implode. And even if it might not come to that, people are hoping for a coronation. We have a whole by-election campaign in which he'll be under the microscope. It's not impossible that blows up.
Likely Andy Burnham. Don't rule out Ed Miliband if he loses. I'm sorry, Harry. Hold your hat. But the danger, of course, is that everybody will say we've got to have a general election now because this new leader is illegitimate.
We'll know more next week. See you then.